Don't play with buffers. Billy and Charlie are two little engines who work on the Fat Controller's railway. They are both the same size and they both know how to handle trucks. They love to have fun, but they also know that it's always important to be really useful. One day, Billy and Charlie were at Tiffmouth Station Yards. They were getting ready to start their day's work. The Fat Controller came to see them. "Today will be a very busy day here at the yards," he said. "Murdoch will arrive later to collect his goods train. You must shunt his trucks so they are ready for him when he gets here." This made Billy and Charlie very excited. "Yes, sir," they cheered. "Start right away," the Fat Controller added, "and remember to be careful." "Of course we will, sir," said Billy. "We'll do our best, sir," added Charlie. So the two engines puffed away. Soon they were busy shunting trucks to and fro. They made sure to shunt the trucks for Murdoch on a different track. Billy was shunting trucks into a siding. He was taking care not to bump them. Suddenly his wheels slipped on the rails. Billy was shocked. "Help!" he shouted. The driver applied the brakes, but Billy slid along the rails and he hit the bumpers with a bump. Luckily his crew wasn't hurt, but they went to see if Billy was hurt. The foreman ran over to Billy to see what the noise was. "Are you alright, Billy?" he asked. "I'm sorry, sir," groaned Billy. "I slipped on the rails and hit the bumpers." The driver walked over to Billy. "You're alright, Billy," he said. "There's nothing broken. But you were very lucky not to have burst through the bumpers, otherwise you would have landed in that ditch." Billy looked and saw the ditch in front of him. He shuddered at the thought. A workman ran over to Billy. He had just checked the track to see what had happened. "That piece of track is worn," he said. "You had better take care when puffing out to the siding." "Yes, sir," said Billy, but he was still upset. "It wasn't your fault, Billy," the foreman said kindly. "Worn rails can be hard to spot." The workman put sand on the rails to help Billy's wheels grip. Then his driver carefully reversed Billy backwards onto the siding. The workman guided Billy's driver with instructions to make sure he didn't slip again. Then Billy could feel his wheels leave the siding. He was relieved to be away from the worn track. "There we go, Billy," said the workman. "You're okay now." "Thank you, sir," said Billy happily. The foreman switched the points and Billy puffed back to work. He felt bad about his accident. A while later, Billy was resting his wheels when Charlie puffed up alongside. "Hello, Billy," he said. "What are you doing resting here?" "I had an accident," sighed Billy. Billy told Charlie about his accident with the worn-out rails. Charlie was surprised to hear this, but then he had a thought. "Did the bumpers break?" he asked. "No," said Billy. "I was very lucky though." "I bet it was great to bump the bumpers." Billy couldn't believe what he had heard. "No, it wasn't," he answered. But Charlie had come up with an idea. "I know a great new game," he grinned, and Billy watched as Charlie puffed away. "Charlie," he called, "where are you going?" "You'll see," Charlie whistled. Billy was puzzled. He wasn't at all sure what Charlie was going to do. Then Billy's driver came up to him. "Come on, Billy," he said. "It's time to get back to work." Billy agreed, so he set off back to his shunting. Billy was soon pulling vans to shunt into Murdoch's train. He felt busy again. He felt better after his accident. Then he saw Charlie puffing towards him, pushing some trucks. Charlie was puffing quickly. "Watch this, Billy!" called Charlie. Charlie raced into the siding with the trucks. Then his wheels slipped on the rails. "Look out, Charlie!" cried Billy. Billy watched as the trucks went bang into the bumpers. "Oh, oh, oh!" droned the trucks. Charlie laughed and laughed. "That was fun," he giggled. Then the foreman ran over to see Charlie. He did not look happy. "What are you playing at?" he shouted. "That was very dangerous." Charlie was surprised. "You could have had an accident," the foreman went on. "You should be more careful when you are approaching buffers." "Your game was very silly," agreed his driver. Charlie felt very silly and very sorry. "Sorry," he moaned. "Go back to work," the foreman ordered, "and no more games." "Yes, sir," sighed Charlie. Charlie puffed out of the siding with his trucks. He felt bad about his game. Billy looked at Charlie. He wasn't happy. "What was that?" he asked. "I thought it would be fun," explained Charlie. "That wasn't fun at all," scoffed Billy, and he puffed away to go back to work. Charlie went to shunt his trucks to another siding. Two engines were soon busy again, moving trucks from sidings to Murdoch's long line of trucks. It wasn't long before Murdoch's train was ready. Billy and Charlie were pleased that the work was done. "Murdoch will be pleased with the train," Charlie puffed. Then the two engines heard a whistle. "Here he comes!" yelled Billy. Murdoch puffed up alongside his train. He was pleased to see it all ready for him. "Well done, Billy and Charlie," he smiled. "Now I just need to take on water and then I'll be on my way." "Very well," said Charlie. "Don't worry, the train won't be going anywhere." Billy and Charlie chuckled at the joke. Murdoch gave a small chuckle. "Very funny," he exclaimed. So Murdoch puffed up towards a set of points. As his driver went to change the point, Billy began to worry when he saw that Murdoch was going to reverse back. "You're going into that siding?" he asked. "Of course," replied Murdoch. "The water tower is here." Then he slowly reversed into the siding. As his driver reached out for the brake, Murdoch's wheel slipped on the rails. "What the?" gasped Murdoch. "Look out!" shouted Billy. "Whoa there, Murdoch!" cried the driver. He pulled the brake, but it was too late. Murdoch's tender hit the buffers with a bump. The buffers wobbled backwards and forwards and then slowly stood still. "That was close," said Murdoch's driver, mopping his brow. His driver carefully moved Murdoch forward towards the water tower. Then he slowed him to a stop beside the hose. While Murdoch was having his drink, the foreman and the workmen examined the buffers. "These buffers are now unsafe," the foreman exclaimed. "We'll have to close the siding until the track and buffers are fixed." When Murdoch had his drink, he puffed out of the siding and went up to his train. While the driver went to couple him up, Murdoch looked at the workmen putting up a safety sign by the water tower. "What's going on?" he cried. "Why did you shout like that, Billy?" Billy was worried, but he knew he had to tell Murdoch. "That track is dangerous," he told Murdoch, "and those buffers are never hazard." And he told Murdoch about his near accident. Then Charlie explained about his silly game that he had played. Murdoch was surprised, but was stern. "I'm sure it wasn't your fault, Billy," he said, "but I am surprised at you, Charlie, playing games with buffers." Billy smiled just a little, and Charlie felt bad. They couldn't think of anything to say. "Buffers are for safety," Murdoch added. "They are not toys. You must never play with safety things." "Yes, Murdoch. Sorry, Murdoch," said Billy and Charlie together. "Good," said Murdoch. "Now I must go. I can't be late." Murdoch whistled goodbye and puffed away with his heavy train. Billy and Charlie thought about what Murdoch said for a long time. "We'll keep away from that siding," suggested Billy. "Good idea," agreed Charlie. "We don't want anyone else hitting the buffers." Then they heard a whistle in the distance. It was Spencer. He had come to Sodor with the Duke and Duchess. "Hello, little engines," he puffed grandly. I'm here to take the Duke and Duchess to Lord Callan's castle. Interesting, sighed Billy. We've been shunting trucks, said Charlie. That's a fun job. Spencer just snorted. That's a little engine's job, he sniffed. Big engines like me never do jobs that little engines do. That's why I'm more important than the both of you put together. This made Billy and Charlie very cross. They didn't like Spencer being rude to them. I now have to take on water, Spencer chuffed, so that I have enough puff for my journey. Then Charlie and Billy looked at the unsafe track. This gave them a naughty idea. Why not use that water tower? Suggested Charlie cheekily. It's the nearest one, agreed Billy. You can puff straight away afterwards. Spencer looked at the water tower. He didn't see the warning sign. Very well, he said. I'll go here. So the two engines watched as Spencer puffed up towards the points. Then the fireman switched the points and the driver guided Spencer into the siding. Then no sooner had Spencer's wheels left the main track, his wheels slipped. What's happening? He shouted. Stop! Shouted the fireman. The driver put on the brakes. But then there was a splintering crash. Spencer's tender broke through the buffers and he landed tender first into the muddy ditch. Luckily no one was hurt, but Spencer was dirty from front to tender. Oh no, he groaned. Billy and Charlie sniggered to each other, but the foreman turned to Billy and Charlie. He was very cross. You wait until the patch controller hears about this, he fumed. Soon, Edward and the Cranes were busy rescuing Spencer from the ditch. The Fat Controller spoke severely to Billy and Charlie. He was furious. What has been going on here? He boomed. I hear that you two tricked Spencer into going into the siding, which you both knew was declared unsafe. We're sorry, sir, said Charlie. I don't want to hear it, interrupted the Fat Controller. Billy, your accident wasn't your fault, but Charlie, your game was very dangerous. Buffers are very important and they play a vital role in safety. But now look at what you've done to Spencer. He was rude to us, sir, put in Billy. That doesn't give you two a right to play tricks on him, the Fat Controller went on. Now I'll have to send him to the works to be repaired and cleaned. Billy and Charlie felt very bad about their trick they had played. Now the Duke and Duchess would be late for their trip. For your punishment, the Fat Controller finished, you will both stay in the shed for a few days until you can learn never to play with buffers. Yes, sir, sighed Billy and Charlie, and both engines felt very silly indeed.